The reason I am standing in front of these beautiful trophies today is because as a South African, I would like to share the story of a motorsport legend that hails from one of our neighboring countries. The country I'm talking about is Rhodesia, known as Zimbabwe today, and this legend's name was William Raymond Amm, affectionately known as Ray Amm. Now that story begins in December 1927, where Ray was born in a town called Salisbury in Rhodesia. By the age of 17, he bought a second-hand AJS and started grass track racing. He very quickly realized that he had a little bit of talent and then borrowed some money from his grandmother and bought himself a used Norton. And very quickly started winning everything in Rhodesia, then even came into South Africa and started winning everything here, PE 100 and. So Rhodesian Motorsport Club then invited and sponsored him to go to the 1949 Isle of Man. Ray decided not to go, but rather to stay behind and marry his childhood sweetheart, Jill Patton. She was 17 years of age at the time, a huge motorsport follower, as well as quite a proficient motorcycle rider herself. Then, by 1950, they went overseas to England as a team, and Ray got himself a 350 Norton as well as a 500 Norton and entered as a privateer. Very quickly, people realized that this man had quite a bit of talent, and Norton picked him up as a factory rider for 1951, and he was the number 2 to the very well-known Jeff Duke. His career quickly grew, and people noticed he had quite a bit of talent, and by the end of 1952, Jeff Duke left to go four-wheel racing and then later back to two-wheel racing and went to the Gilera factory, because by this time the British had lost their dominance in the motorcycle racing and the Italians were on the ascendancy. But Ray Amm stayed with Norton, became the number 1 works rider and persisted with the Norton factory. In 1953, Ray actually spent 3 months in Ireland helping Norton develop the Norton kneeler. Now the concept with a kneeler was that your center of gravity is picked up by your feet on the foot pegs, the lowest point on the bike. Now, going down and taking that weight on your shins, you're kneeling on a cushion on the bike so that the bike is much flatter, your center of gravity is lower to the ground. Ray actually attempted to race the 350 Isle of Man on the kneeler in 1953, however, realized that the bike was affected quite seriously by wind in the mountains, so reverted back to the normal bike. But by the end of 1953, they went back to that aborted project and broke some land speed records, and Ray took the record at the end of 1953 in France at 133.7 mile an hour, and then later went on to set another land speed record with a fellow rider in a sidecar. And he had a very successful time in 1953. He even won the double. I think he was the 3rd or the 4th man ever to do that at the Isle of Man. What the double means is you win the senior and the junior. So he won both races on the 350 and the 500cc at the Isle of Man in 53. He would have repeated that feat in 1954. However, while leading the 350 class, he had to retire with mechanical failure. His 53 campaign came to a premature end with a broken collarbone. However, he returned in 1954 even stronger and more determined, and he was willing to fight the Italian motorcycles on the outperformed British bikes. Yet he still managed to pick up some wins and some podiums and finished second, runner-up to Kavanagh in the 350 class and runner-up in the 500 class to Jeff Duke on the Gilera. By the end of that season, he realized he had to move to an Italian brand, and MV Agusta signed him up, picking him up as their top rider. However, very sadly, in 1955 on Easter weekend, April, at his debut race in the 350 class at the Imola racetrack, he had a fatal accident at the second Rivazza corner. And that's how the shining light of a future champion came to an end very sadly prematurely. Before we look at these trophies in more detail, I'd like to talk about our backdrop. What I have over here on my right, this was the flag of Rhodesia of the day and the early 50s Rhodesian coat of arms in the middle. On the left here is a pastel drawing I did after being inspired. Having received these trophies and studied the man's life and his achievement, I drew this picture to dedicate to his 1953 double win at the Isle of Man, as mentioned before. And here it is jumping at the quarter bridge. And what's very interesting to see is that he was a very patriotic man and always had the Rhodesian coat of arms on the front of his helmet. And this is him on his 500 Norton Manx. Right, now, looking at these trophies in no particular order, I'll start at the back row. And over here on my left, this is a plate trophy, and what it says etched in front is Sveriges Grand Prix Hedemora 1954. Sveriges is actually from the Swedish Grand Prix, and etched in front here is the topographical map of the racetrack, saying 7,265 meters. 66-year-old, not in bad shape at all, and quite pretty. Over here on my right, we have a nice big trophy, and what it says on it is Sveriges Grand Prix 1954, second place 500cc. And the tall one next to it was actually won in Germany. And I'll read it to you. It says Ehrenpreis Internationales DMV Motorradrennen rund den Schotten. And that was won on the 8th of August 1954. Now let's go to the front and have a look at the front row. This first trophy over here, you can see the FIM, Federale Internazionale Motociclette logo over here, and what it says in front is Grand Premio della Nazione, Grand Prix of Nations, and it's at the Autodromo di Monza, the Monza racetrack, and it's a Giro di Veloce Class 350. It's for fastest lap in the 350 Grand Prix. The one next to it was won at the same Grand Prix, also has the FIM logo in front, and this is Grand Prix of Nations 1952, and at the Autodromo of Monza, and first place class 350cc. So same race, winner's trophy and fastest lap trophy. So both these trophies are the same event, 1952. This is the winner's trophy, and that is the trophy for fastest lap. And what is super interesting is that shortly before this, Ray Amm actually broke his leg, and he came back, leg in a cast, to win this race. Quite a tough guy. Over here are two trophies, both from Germany as well, this being one of my favorites. As you can see, the German eagle over here, and what it says in front, it has the Roman numeral XV and two lines, meaning 17 Internationales ADAC Eifelrennen auf dem Nürburgring, 23 May 1954. What that means, it's an international ADAC sponsor, Eiffel Mountains race at the Nürburgring in 1954. Right next to it is also from the Nürburgring, and Ehrenpreis is an honorary prize because this is, the bottom line says, für schnellste Zeit des Tages, which is German for fastest time of the day. And if you turn it around, you see it's also ADAC, the sponsor. Eifelrennen is in the Eiffel Mountains, Nürburgring, and on the 5th of September, 54, this one was achieved. And right next to it is one of those tokens for participants at the Isle of Man, and you see the Isle of Man emblem next to it. Coming to the other side, next to the Isle of Man, we have this trophy. And what that says in front of it is first place for the 500 Grand Prix, and it's the Grand Prix of Ndola, 1951. Ndola is a city in Zambia, another proof that Ray was winning everything in sub-Saharan Africa. And the last trophy over here, what that says, Internationales Rennen rund den Schotten, 13 July 1952. Also international rund den Schotten is a German trophy, won in Germany. We really feel honored to have had these beautiful trophies donated to us by the Patton family, and hope to have done justice to this great man by telling his story. Ray might be gone, but his legacy will never be forgotten. click like and subscribe and follow us on Route 21 Garage.